Lieutenant Jake Morrison felt the bone snap as he hit the rocky outcrop, his right tibia breaking with an audible crack that echoed across the Kepler 186F valley. Around him, the rest of the diplomatic escort lay motionless. 12 elite Galactic Federation soldiers from 6 different species, all unconscious from the Zephyrian ambush. The approaching enemy force was impressive by any military standard. 300 Zephyrian shock troops in full combat exoskeletons, their crystalline energy weapons charged and ready. They moved with the coordinated precision of a species that had conquered 14 star systems through overwhelming force and technological superiority. General Crixmore, leading the assault, raised one of his 4 arms to halt his troops as they surrounded the lone conscious human. Through his helmet's tactical display, he could see the extent of Morrison's injuries: compound fracture, probable internal bleeding, and obvious shock. An easy capture. Human, Crixmore's voice boomed through his suit speakers. You are defeated. Surrender, and we will make your death quick. Morrison looked up from where he sat propped against the rock, his face pale, but his eyes still alert. Blood seeped through his torn uniform pants where the bone had broken through his skin. Yeah, about that, he said, his voice steady despite the obvious pain. I'm going to have to pass on the surrender option. The Zephyrian general's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. You cannot stand, human. You cannot run. Your primitive projectile weapon is empty, and your allies are unconscious. What could you possibly do against 300 warriors? Morrison reached into his medical kit with steady hands, retrieving a field syringe filled with combat stimulants. You know what the funny thing is about humans, General? He jabbed the needle into his thigh without hesitation. We're really bad at knowing when we're beaten. Foolish bravado will not. No, see, that's where you're wrong, Morrison interrupted, using his rifle as a makeshift splint to bind his broken leg. This isn't bravado. This is biology. The stimulants hit his system like liquid fire. His pupils dilated, his heart rate spiked, and the sharp edges of pain became distant background noise. Morrison gritted his teeth and forced himself to stand on his improvised splint. You see, back on Earth, we had this thing called persistence hunting, he continued conversationally while checking his remaining ammunition. When our ancestors couldn't outrun prey or overpower it directly, they just kept coming. 4 hours. Days sometimes. Until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. General Crixmore's tactical analysis was flawless. The human was clearly dying, massive trauma, blood loss, combat drugs that would destroy his cardiovascular system within hours. Yet something about Morrison's demeanor triggered ancient survival instincts in the Zephyrian commander's mind. The thing about persistence hunting, Morrison said, limping forward with mechanical determination, is that it's not about being faster or stronger than your prey. It's about being too stupid to quit when you should. He raised his rifle, and despite his injuries, his aim was steady. The first shot took down a Zephyrian trooper. The second disabled another's weapon. Morrison kept walking forward, firing with methodical precision despite the broken bone grinding against itself with each step. Sir, one of Crixmore's lieutenants spoke urgently. Tactical analysis indicates the human should be unconscious or dead. His continued combat effectiveness is impossible. Morrison reloaded with practiced efficiency, his movements automatic despite the combat drugs coursing through his system. You want to know what's impossible? He called out. I once knew a guy who walked 15 miles on a broken ankle because his daughter was in a school play. Another friend ran a marathon with a stress fracture because he trained for 2 years. The human fired again, and another Zephyrian fell. What terrified Crixmore wasn't the accuracy. It was the complete absence of self-preservation in Morrison's behavior. The human was treating his own imminent death as an inconvenience rather than a deterrent. We're not built to win fights, Morrison continued, his voice growing hoarser but no less determined. "We're built to make sure nobody else wins them either." A collective chill ran through the Zephyrian ranks. Their species had conquered through superior technology and overwhelming force, but they'd always fought opponents who behaved rationally, who retreated when defeat was certain, who surrendered when continued resistance was futile. "Fall back," General Crixmore ordered quietly. "Sir?" "Fall back," he roared. "Full retreat." As the Zephyrian army withdrew in organized confusion, Morrison collapsed against a tree, his improvised splint finally giving way. The combat stimulants were wearing off, and the pain was returning in waves that made him nauseous. His comm unit crackled to life. "Morrison, this is Falcon Base. We're tracking Zephyrian forces in full retreat from your position. What's your status?" Morrison looked down at his mangled leg, then at the unconscious forms of his teammates, who were finally beginning to stir. "Mission accomplished," he said simply, "though I'm going to need a really good medic." Later, when Admiral Chen asked General Crixmore why an army of 300 had retreated from a single wounded human, the Zephyrians' response entered military databases across the galaxy. "Because," Crixmore said, his forearms trembling slightly at the memory, "we realized that if humans fight that hard when they're dying, we didn't want to find out what they do when they're healthy."